My beloved brothers and sisters, every one of us has at some point looked up at the sky, seen the beauty of creation, and wondered about the one who made it all. The mountains, the oceans, the stars, none of these appeared by accident. Deep within every human heart is a natural inclination to believe in a creator, a higher power, the one who brought us into existence with purpose and wisdom. This belief is not just a concept for discussion. It is the foundation of our lives, guiding our thoughts, our actions, and our values. From the beginning of time, the Almighty has sent messengers and prophets to remind humanity of the truth, to bring us back when we drift away, and to teach us how to live in a way that pleases Him. These prophets were not self-appointed, they were chosen by God Himself. They came with the same essential message: to worship the one true God and to follow His guidance. Whether it was Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, or Muhammad, peace be upon them all, they all carried the light of truth, each to their own people, each fulfilling a divine mission. When we truly understand belief in God and His prophets, we realize that faith is not just about rituals, but about building a living connection with our Creator. It is about trusting His plan, learning from His messengers, and walking on the path they showed us, a path of mercy, justice, and hope. Belief in God is the foundation upon which every aspect of faith is built, because it shapes the way a person sees the world, understands their purpose, and determines their moral compass. When someone truly believes in God, they acknowledge that there is a higher power who created the universe, who sustains it, and who has authority over all creation. This belief instills humility as a person realizes they are not the ultimate source of power or control. It also fosters gratitude, knowing that every blessing, big or small, comes from the one who created them. This belief influences daily choices, as the awareness of God's presence guides a person to act with honesty, kindness, and justice even when no one else is watching. Belief in God is not limited to acknowledging His existence in theory. It involves placing trust in Him, submitting to His will, and seeking to please Him in every aspect of life. It means recognizing that He is the source of all wisdom and His guidance is perfect and complete. For believers, this faith becomes an anchor during times of difficulty, reminding them that no trial occurs without purpose and that God's mercy and justice prevail in every situation. Believing in God also brings a sense of accountability, as it reminds individuals that life does not end with death but continues into the hereafter, where everyone will be judged according to their deeds. This accountability inspires a life of integrity, where one's actions align with divine values and principles. In Islam and other Abrahamic faiths, belief in God is inseparable from love for Him, fear of displeasing Him, and hope in His forgiveness and reward. This balance creates a healthy spiritual state where a believer is motivated to strive for goodness and avoid wrongdoing. This belief also unites people of different backgrounds and cultures under the same acknowledgement of a single creator. It eliminates the arrogance of thinking one group of people is inherently superior to another, as all human beings are creations of the same God and equally dependent on Him. It encourages compassion, generosity, and service to others, as these are acts that please the Almighty. Without belief in God, faith becomes hollow, merely a set of rituals without a living connection to the one who gave them meaning. Belief gives those rituals depth and turns them into acts of devotion that nourish the soul. It transforms challenges into opportunities for spiritual growth and blessings into reminders of divine mercy. It teaches that life is temporary and that every moment is an opportunity to earn the pleasure of the Creator. It is through this foundation that all other aspects of faith gain stability and meaning, making belief in God the central pillar upon which a meaningful, moral, and spiritually fulfilling life rests. Prophets were chosen by God to guide humanity because human beings, despite their intelligence and reasoning, are in constant need of divine direction to live according to the purpose for which they were created. Throughout history, God in His infinite wisdom selected certain individuals from among the people to carry His message, people who were known for their honesty, integrity, and moral excellence even before they were given the responsibility of prophethood. These individuals were not self-appointed leaders seeking fame or power. They were appointed by the Creator Himself, entrusted with the most noble and difficult of missions. Their duty was to remind people of the truth, warn them against wrongdoing, and call them back to the worship of the one true God. Prophets were sent at different times and places to address the needs of their communities, often during periods when people had strayed far from divine teachings or corrupted previous messages. They came with clear signs, miracles, and revelations that proved their authority came from God. Each prophet spoke in the language of their people, understood their culture, and addressed the specific moral and spiritual challenges they faced. While their laws and instructions sometimes varied according to the time and situation, Their core message was always the same: to worship God alone, live righteously, and prepare for the day of judgment. The selection of prophets reflects God's mercy and concern for His creation. He did not leave humanity without guidance or leave them to wander in confusion. Instead, He continually sent messengers to ensure that people always had access to the truth. Some prophets, like Noah, Moses, and Jesus, faced immense rejection and opposition from their people, yet they remained steadfast, patient, and committed to their mission. They endured hardship, mockery, and even physical harm, not because they sought personal benefit, but because they were fulfilling the sacred trust placed upon them by God. Prophets were also role models in character and behavior. They demonstrated through their actions how to live a life pleasing to God, embodying qualities such as patience, forgiveness, compassion, humility, and justice. Their lives served as living examples, showing that divine commandments are not only to be spoken about, but to be practiced in every aspect of life. Belief in the prophets is therefore essential to faith, as rejecting them means rejecting the message they carried from God. From Adam, the first prophet, to Muhammad, the final messenger in Islam, the chain of prophethood forms a continuous thread of guidance for humanity. Each prophet's mission built upon the previous one, leading humanity closer to the completion of divine revelation. Their guidance remains a timeless reminder that God's love and care for humanity are expressed not only in the creation of the world, but also in the sending of those who illuminate the path back to Him from the very beginning of human history. The core message delivered by every prophet chosen by God was the worship of one God without associating any partners with Him. This central belief, known as monotheism, has been the foundation of true faith across all divine revelations. Whether it was Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, or Muhammad, each prophet called their people away from idol worship, false deities, and man made systems of belief, guiding them instead toward the pure and direct worship of the Creator. They reminded people that God is the source of all life, the sustainer of the heavens and the earth, and the only one deserving of devotion, prayer, and obedience. Prophets did not merely instruct people to acknowledge God's existence. They taught that true worship requires sincerity, humility, and complete submission to His will. They warned against the dangers of worshipping creation instead of the Creator, whether that creation took the form of idols, celestial bodies, leaders, or even one's own desires. By preaching the oneness of God, they sought to liberate humanity from spiritual slavery and guide them toward a life of purpose and accountability. This message was universal and timeless, relevant to all people regardless of their culture, language, or historical period. Throughout history, the prophets encountered communities that either forgotten or deliberately altered the pure message of monotheism. In some cases, people had added intermediaries between themselves and God, believing that they needed saints, spirits, or other deities to reach Him. The prophets firmly rejected such practices, teaching that God is closer to a person than their own jugular vein, and that He listens to every sincere prayer without the need for intercession from any other being. They consistently emphasize that God's power, mercy, and knowledge are beyond human comprehension, and that no one shares in His divine attributes. The call to worship one God was always accompanied by moral and ethical guidance. The prophets reminded their followers that belief in God is meaningless if it is not reflected in righteous conduct, honesty in dealings, compassion toward others, and justice in all matters. Worship was not limited to rituals, but extended to every action done for God's sake, from caring for the poor to speaking the truth even when it is difficult. By uniting people under the worship of one God, prophets also sought to create harmony and equality among them. They taught that no person is superior to another except by virtue of piety and good deeds. In this way, the belief in one God served as a foundation for both spiritual growth and social justice. Across the ages, despite differences in language, customs, and laws, the prophet's unwavering message remained constant. There is no God but God, and to Him alone belongs all worship and submission. From the earliest prophet to the final messenger, the essence of the divine message has remained consistent, showing that God's guidance to humanity is timeless and universal. Regardless of the historical period or geographical location, every prophet was sent with the same foundational truths: to worship one God, to live a life of righteousness, and to uphold justice and compassion in dealings with others. While the details of laws and practices might have differed according to the needs of each community, the underlying principles never changed. This consistency is a sign of the unity of the divine source from which all revelation originates. Prophets across time reinforced the importance of faith, accountability, and moral conduct. Adam, the first prophet, taught the importance of obeying God's commands. Noah called his people to turn away from corruption and false gods. Abraham preached complete submission to God's will, rejecting idolatry in all its forms. Moses guided his people with God's laws, encouraging justice and mercy. Jesus reminded his followers to worship God alone and to embody love and humility. Muhammad came as the seal of the prophets, affirming the messages of those before him and calling all of humanity to the same truth. These teachings, though delivered to different nations and cultures, aligned perfectly in purpose and spirit. This consistency across centuries reveals that the purpose of life has always been the same: to know and worship the Creator, to follow His guidance, and to prepare for the eternal life to come. Even when societies drifted away from the truth, altering or forgetting parts of the divine message, God sent prophets to restore what had been lost. Their role was not to create new religions, but to bring people back to the original faith that all prophets shared. This is why the Qur'an speaks of Islam, meaning submission to God, as the common religion of all prophets from Adam to Muhammad. The harmony in the prophetic message also emphasizes that humanity, despite its diversity, shares a common spiritual heritage. The teachings of the prophets remind us that we are all part of one human family created by the same God, and that the principles of truth, justice, and mercy are not bound by culture or era. The prophets addressed issues that are just as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago: dishonesty, oppression, greed, division, and spiritual neglect. And they offered solutions rooted in belief in God and adherence to His commands. Even though the outward forms of worship or specific societal laws may have adapted to the needs of each generation, the core message of all prophets has never wavered. They all invited people to a direct relationship with God, free of intermediaries, and encouraged them to lead lives of moral integrity and service to others. Their consistency serves as a proof of the divine origin of their mission and a reminder that the truth is not subject to the changes of time or the preferences of society. Prophets are the finest role models for humanity, embodying the highest standards of moral character and righteous conduct in every aspect of life. They were chosen by God not only to deliver His message, but to live by it in a way that demonstrated its beauty and practicality. Their lives serve as living examples of how to uphold truth, justice, kindness, and humility even in the face of trials and opposition. Every prophet exhibited unwavering faith, selflessness, and dedication to God's commands, showing that righteousness is possible for anyone who sincerely strives for it. They faced challenges, ridicule, and even persecution, yet remained steadfast and patient, proving that moral strength comes from reliance on God. Their integrity was absolute, as they were known to speak the truth, even when it brought them personal loss or danger. They never compromised their principles for worldly gain, and they treated all people with fairness and compassion regardless of status or background. Prophets did not merely preach values, they lived them in their personal and public lives. For example, Prophet Muhammad was known as Al-Amin, the trustworthy, even before his prophethood, and he maintained that honesty until his last breath. Prophet Joseph displayed remarkable patience and forgiveness, even towards those who wronged him deeply. Prophet Moses showed courage in standing up to the most oppressive ruler of his time while still praying for guidance and mercy. Prophet Jesus exemplified humility and compassion, serving the poor, healing the sick, and teaching love for others. Prophets also demonstrated balance in their lives, fulfilling their duties to God, their families, and their communities without neglecting any responsibility. They engaged with people, understood their struggles, and provided guidance with wisdom and gentleness. Their leadership was not marked by arrogance or oppression, but by service and sacrifice. They endured hunger, poverty, and exile, yet never turned away from the mission entrusted to them. This perseverance in hardship shows that moral and righteous living is not dependent on ease or comfort, but on unwavering commitment to divine principles. In their dealings, prophets upheld justice without favoritism and extended mercy without hesitation. They encouraged forgiveness over revenge, generosity over selfishness, and truth over deceit. Their actions were rooted in the understanding that life in this world is temporary and that the true reward lies with God. They reminded their followers through both words and deeds that righteousness requires discipline, sincerity, and a constant awareness of accountability before God. By observing the lives of prophets, believers gain practical examples of how to respond to trials, how to maintain integrity in business, how to show kindness in family life, and how to lead with humility and fairness. Their moral excellence was not reserved for extraordinary moments, but was evident in their daily interactions, proving that righteousness is a way of life rather than a series of isolated acts. Through their unwavering dedication to truth, justice, and compassion, Prophets became guiding lights for humanity, inspiring generations to live with the same integrity. And devotion belief in prophets strengthens our connection to God because it links us directly to the chain of divine guidance that has been sent throughout history. Prophets are chosen by God to convey His words, instructions, and wisdom to humanity, serving as a bridge between the Creator and His creation. When a person believes in the prophets, they are affirming their trust in the messages God has revealed. And this trust naturally deepens their relationship with Him. Prophets were sent not to seek personal glory, wealth, or power, but to remind people of their true purpose in life and to call them back to worship the one who created them. By following their example and embracing their teachings, a believer learns how to align their life with God's will in both spiritual and practical matters. This belief also nurtures humility, as one acknowledges that human understanding is limited without divine guidance. The wisdom, patience, and dedication of the prophets illustrate how to live a God-conscious life, and through studying their stories, a believer draws closer to God's mercy and guidance. Each prophet's life offers lessons on perseverance, forgiveness, and reliance on God in times of difficulty. For example, the steadfastness of Prophet Noah in preaching for centuries despite rejection shows the value of patience in faith. The courage of Prophet Moses in confronting Pharaoh highlights the strength that comes from trusting God. The compassion of Prophet Muhammad Bey in forgiving his enemies teaches the believer that mercy is a reflection of God's own mercy. Belief in prophets also brings unity to the believer's understanding of history and revelation. The Qur'an and the Bible recount stories of the same prophets, from Adam to Abraham, Moses, and Jesus, showing that the message of God has been consistent throughout the ages. This continuity reinforces faith by reminding believers that they are part of a long line of worshippers who sought to submit to the will of God. It also builds respect for the divine wisdom in sending guidance suited to different peoples and times, while maintaining the same core truth of God's oneness and the call to righteousness. When a believer holds firm to the teachings of the prophets, their worship becomes more meaningful, their prayers more sincere, and their trust in God more complete. The prophets serve as role models whose lives embody obedience, gratitude, and reliance on God. They faced hardships with dignity and remained unwavering in their mission, showing that true connection to God comes from steadfast devotion even in the face of trials. By reflecting on their lives and internalizing their values, a believer develops a stronger spiritual bond with the Creator, recognizing that these messengers were chosen to lead humanity towards light, truth, and eternal success. Rejecting a prophet is rejecting God's guidance, because prophets are not ordinary individuals who simply share personal ideas or philosophies. They are chosen messengers of the Creator, entrusted with delivering His words, His commands, and His instructions for human life. Every prophet is sent with a clear mission, supported by divine signs, wisdom, and moral excellence that come from their authenticity. When someone rejects a prophet, they are essentially turning away from the very message that God has sent to guide them to truth, justice, and salvation. This rejection is not just about dismissing a person, it is about denying the divine authority behind the prophet's message, which in turn means closing the heart and mind to the Creator's will. Throughout history, God has sent prophets to every nation and community, each delivering guidance that was most relevant and suitable for their time and people. These prophets called humanity to the worship of one God, to live with integrity, compassion, and fairness, and to avoid actions that lead to corruption and destruction. The rejection of a prophet often stemmed from arrogance, pride, or an unwillingness to abandon false beliefs and practices. By refusing to accept the prophet, people effectively rejected the opportunity for enlightenment, mercy, and divine forgiveness that God was offering them. This is why the consequences of rejecting a prophet are described so severely in religious texts, because it is a refusal to accept the only path that leads to God's pleasure. The Qur'an gives numerous examples of nations that rejected their prophets and faced consequences not merely as punishment, but as a natural result of turning away from divine guidance. The people of Noah mocked him and refused to heed his warnings, leading to their destruction. The people of Thamud rejected Prophet Salih and his message, despite the clear miracle of the sheikh camel given to them as a sign, and they met a tragic end. The same pattern can be seen in the rejection faced by Prophet Moses from Pharaoh, who defiantly opposed God's commands and oppressed the people. These stories serve as reminders that rejecting a prophet is ultimately rejecting God Himself, because the prophet's words are not their own, but the words of the Almighty. On the other hand, accepting a prophet is a sign of humility and submission to God's authority. It demonstrates a willingness to be guided, to learn, and to reform one's life according to divine standards. The Prophet's teachings are the blueprint for a meaningful, righteous life, and turning away from them leaves a person without the compass that points towards truth and eternal success. When someone rejects a prophet, they also miss the opportunity to witness and follow the purest example of moral character, devotion, and sincerity in worship. By rejecting the messenger, they sever the connection to the source of divine wisdom and close themselves off from the light of guidance that God intended to illuminate their path. Each prophet brought guidance suited to their people because God, in his infinite wisdom and mercy, understood the unique circumstances, cultures, and challenges of each community. Divine revelation was never given as a one-size-fits-all message in its application, even though the core truth of worshipping one God remained the same. Instead, God tailored the guidance to meet the social, moral, and spiritual needs of a specific time and place. For example, the guidance brought to the people of Prophet Noah addressed their stubbornness, arrogance, and refusal to abandon idolatry. For the people of Prophet Moses, the laws given through the Torah were detailed and structured to instill discipline in a community that had experienced slavery and oppression for generations. Prophets were deeply familiar with the hearts and minds of the people they were sent to guide, and God equipped them with messages, miracles, and methods that would resonate most effectively. This is why the Qur'an says that every nation received a messenger who spoke their language, both literally and in terms of cultural relevance. The guidance was revealed in a way the people could understand, connect with, and implement in their daily lives. Whether it was through stories, commandments, or parables, the delivery of the divine message took into account the intellectual and emotional state of that community. In some cases, the guidance included very specific laws to address the moral decay of the people. In others, the focus was on breaking harmful traditions that had become deeply ingrained over centuries. For instance, Prophet Abraham confronted idol worship and the misguided practices of his people, while Prophet Jesus was sent to correct distortions that had crept into religious law and to revive the spirit of mercy and compassion among the Israelites. The Quran confirms that these messages were like stepping stones, each building upon the previous one, guiding humanity closer to the complete and final revelation. This approach also highlights the fairness and justice of God. He never leaves a community without knowledge of the truth, nor does he demand from them what they cannot understand or apply. Instead, he sends guidance that is within their capacity to follow, addressing the unique issues that prevent them from living righteously. This means no community can claim they were left without a clear opportunity to know and worship God. At the same time, the different forms of guidance do not contradict one another in their essence. They all point towards the same Creator and call people to the same moral and spiritual principles. The changes in detail or practice reflect the evolving stages of human society and the preparation for the final and universal message brought by Prophet Muhammad A. The fact that each prophet's message was suited to their people is a sign of God's personal care for humanity, showing that his guidance is always relevant, timely, and perfectly adapted to the needs of those who receive it. The finality of prophethood in Islam with Prophet Muhammad is one of the core beliefs that shapes the Muslim understanding of divine guidance and revelation. Islam teaches that from the very beginning of human history, God sent prophets to guide humanity, each bringing a message suited to their time and people. These prophets came in a chain, each affirming the truth brought by those before them and preparing the way for those to come. This continuous chain of messengers reached its completion with Prophet Muhammad A, who was sent as the seal of the prophets, bringing a universal message for all humanity until the end of time. His mission was not limited to a specific tribe, region, or era, but was intended for all people, cultures, and generations. The Quran clearly affirms that Muhammad A is the last of the prophets, making it clear that no new prophet will come after him. This finality signifies that the message he brought, the Quran, is complete, perfect, and preserved by God himself. Unlike earlier revelations, which were often altered or lost over time, the Quran has remained unchanged since it was revealed more than 400 years ago. This preservation ensures that the guidance provided by Islam will always remain accessible and reliable for anyone who seeks it. The finality of prophethood also means that the life and teachings of Prophet Muhammad serve as the ultimate example for believers. His words, actions, and character are recorded in great detail, providing a living demonstration of how to live according to God's will in all aspects of life. Whether it is matters of worship, family, leadership, business, or morality, his example offers timeless wisdom that remains relevant across all cultures and times. Another important aspect of this belief is that with the completion of prophethood, the responsibility of preserving and spreading God's message now lies with the followers of Islam. Muslims are tasked with living by the Quran and Sunnah and sharing the truth with others through both words and actions. This responsibility requires sincerity, humility, and respect, as the message is not to be changed or adjusted to fit human desires, but upheld exactly as it was revealed. Believing in the finality of prophethood also protects the faith from distortion. Throughout history, false claimants to prophethood have appeared, leading people astray with fabricated teachings. The Islamic principle that no prophet will come after Muhammad serves as a safeguard against such deception. It reinforces the idea that the divine guidance humanity needs has already been fully delivered, and it is now a matter of following and implementing it rather than seeking something new. This belief also connects Muslims to the legacy of all previous prophets, affirming that Islam is the continuation and completion of the same divine message given to Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and others. It unites their teachings under one final, preserved revelation and one final messenger whose mission is eternal and whose guidance is for all people without exception. My brothers and sisters, when we speak about belief in God and His prophets, we are speaking about the very core of our faith, the foundation upon which everything else stands. Without belief in the Almighty, life becomes empty of true purpose, and without acknowledging His prophets, we close the doors to the purest form of guidance ever giving to mankind. Every prophet came with a message that was not their own, but the word of God Almighty, filled with wisdom, mercy, and light. From Adam to Noah, from Abraham to Moses, from Jesus to Muhammad, peace be upon them all, their lives were living examples of faith, patience, and dedication to the Creator. Believing in God and His prophets means we are connected to a chain of truth that spans generations, cultures, and nations. It is not about separating people, but about uniting them under the oneness of God. It is about recognizing that the same Creator who gave life to you and me is the one who chose the most righteous among His servants to guide us. When we hold firm to this belief, we stand on unshakable ground, no matter what storms may come our way. So let us keep our hearts open to the words of the Almighty, follow the examples of His prophets, and strive to live with the same sincerity, compassion, and steadfastness that they taught. May the Almighty make us among those who recognize the truth and remain firm upon it, and may He grant us the company of the prophets in the hereafter.